Good morning, it's Brian. It is the Art of Startup War. And today is about every other week. What I do is I bring you epic entrepreneurs. These are not folks that we're saying, oh my gosh, these guys are really good. You should look at them. We're promoters. No, 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 no. These are people that we invest in, and we invest in because we think they're epic. We believe they have an epic insight which sees something that all those other thousands of entrepreneurs do not see. And then we put our money where our mouth is because we believe so strongly they're going to break through. Some companies are a little bit easier than others to tell, I got to tell you, because the sector is killer, because their traction so far is killer, because their idea is killer, and because killer. This is that company. So we're going to talk about GameTree today. We're going to talk about gaming. We're going to talk about esports. We're going to talk about the rise of, I don't even know if it's a revolution anymore. I think it was a revolution like 10 years ago. I think right now it's just the rise of the most obvious game-changing movement in just sports entertainment that maybe there's ever been since the beginning of time. Like, it's super fascinating. So John and Dana, welcome to the show. It's all about you. It's all about what you're building and how you're building it and how exciting it is. And this show is for investors. Like, if somebody else wants to listen to it, honestly, it's weird, because what the hell do you want to hear about our investment thesis for? We're going to make it entertaining and we're going to make it interesting, but this is purely for folks who are thinking, I'm looking at a bunch of startups. I'm thinking of investing in startups. I already invest in startups. And I want to see why this company is the best company to invest in. And I'd like to layer in all the diligence that Dojo did so that I can get a better understanding of it. So, with that context, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to tell more about what's going on in the gaming industry.
Right. So gaming is fast. So I'll throw two little things out about gaming. Number one, yesterday I had a conversation at 11:30 at night for an hour and a half talking about buying esports teams and the like, because it's that exciting, right? So I want to just throw that context in there as something that will probably consume my entire weekend. And then so I suppose to help with that context for folks who are listening, like, just I want to talk about, just before we go into GameTree, the magnitude of what's happened in esports. Because we had, like, I don't know, like, since the beginning of man and woman, people have like kicked footballs around or round things around, or they've run down like a piece of grass and they've thrown something at each other. And these things evolved into games, and then these games became things, and then they got names, and they were basketball or they were like American football. They were like, that was that. And then something happened. I don't know, is it like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, where literally everything changed? And if you looked at just a cold, hard stats from then and stats from now, basketball viewership, football viewership being increasing since the beginning of time until it wasn't, right? And there was like this line where suddenly an entire generation stopped following what their predecessors had done. And then we start looking at like individual sports within esports, and we see astronomical growth, like even with Fortnite, with 400 million people playing it.
Even literally last weekend, there was a tournament with a $20 million prize pool.
I know we have one of our teams going off to a tournament right now. Like, it is like, so what's happened? What happened? What happened? And how come nobody noticed this was like, it's not on CNN, it's not on Fox News, it's not in the newspapers, it's not even in friggin' YouTube. Like, what happened that an entire generation kept this a secret, but really, like, everything has changed?
Well, it's only a secret from you, Brian.
Yeah,
we know. No, I think it's that it's a new thing. It didn't exist, 10, 20 years ago. And that's the prime time when people are gaming usually, is their teens into their 30s. And so a lot of investors are missing the ball on gaming. I'm really happy that it's starting to reach public awareness a lot more, but it's, as a representation of an industry, so much more massive than the amount of attention it gets. And it's because the people with the money and the people making the decisions didn't grow up with it. So it's all flying under the radar for them. And they don't feel comfortable with it because they're like, oh, I didn't grow up with this, or I don't understand it. So because of that, there's a scarcity of capital there where you're going to get way more returns just due to the size of the market and how much fewer actors there are.
Which is terrible, but it's awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
And from another way,
Yeah.
young generation, they actually grew up with online games, and for them, like real games looks like old fashioned, not so fun, not so cool. So it's very easy to predict that this generation, even in the future, they will more likely follow esports than real sports. I
And
do
so,
not say that real sports
mhm.
will not exist. It will exist. It probably will be smaller because this audience will go for esports.
Yeah,
Esports seems like kind of nerdy or a niche thing, but for me, it's hard to imagine esports not being as big or bigger than real sports in the future.
it already is, John. And so here's like kind of my point to this is that it's normally when one new trend takes over from a previous trend, we're already at mass adoption. Like, and I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about people knowing about it. I'm talking about discussions around it. I'm talking about money going into it and everything. And that's happened, right? This isn't something in the future that we're saying, like, maybe esports has got a chance of breaking through. Like, it's already happened that esports has taken over as far as growth versus almost every other sport out there, right? And that has happened maybe 3 to 5 years ago. And so I feel that actually within esports there is a very strong lack of PR and branding within the space itself, because outside the demographic of the folks that are playing it, it's not being publicized, not in a huge way, and that's limiting certain things. It's limiting, even though the purses are increasing for the prizes, they should be so much bigger. Come on, like, look how much an NBA player gets. Look how much sponsorship there is at one Lakers game on a Saturday night versus what goes into this. It's still chump change. And I say this in like in a highly respectful and awesome way, because the opportunity is here. That's my point to all of this. Like, for all investors listening, if you are not trying to understand and getting involved in esports, you are missing something that's already happened. But the wonderful news is that the opportunity for massive financial gains is still here. But this window will close. You have a 6 to 12 month window, and by that stage, everybody will know. Even with poor branding and poor PR and pure messaging and poor everything, it window will still be closed, and everything will become too expensive. And I'll say a little story. My financial partner, 20 years ago, had an opportunity to buy the Clippers, and he was going to buy them for a tiny purse. I can't even say how much it was. It was small. But to him at that time, it's like 30 years ago actually, to him at that time, it was a lot of money. And his partner was supposed to come in and buy it. And his partner didn't come in, and then they never spoke again. It turned into a big thing, and he always looks back at that moment as like one of those moments in his life that would have been the proudest and most incredible moment that he would have had. And now, of course, nobody can ever afford to buy a major league sports team again because we're later on. And so we're in that moment in esports right now, and it's so exciting and it's so interesting and so awesome. So, okay, everybody, investors who know about this, investors who don't know about it, context laid down, right? You get it. This is monster. And so, who are the folks that you're going to be able to make money from in this particular space? And in this particular case, actually, the folks that are mining for gold are making gold. There's money to be made there for sure. But the old adjective of the folks who makes the picks and shovels are the ones you should be going after is still true in this sport. And that's why we're going to talk about GameTree. So, share with us, please. Tell us about GameTree. We're going to get into traction afterwards. We're going to get into like the scalable product fit. We're going to get into the team and how you got put together. For now, I want to get right back to the genesis of the idea and where did it come from? And then when you realized there was something massively lacking in here, what was that moment that you said, I can actually do something about this, and it started turning into something?
So what initiated it was slightly earlier in the gaming stage where it's been blowing up for sure. It's crossed the threshold of like uncool to like, I don't know about cool, but it's not uncool for sure anymore.
Yeah, it's there.
And that's a really big pivotal shift. And surprisingly, there's very few tools in the gaming industry. They're popping up a lot more now than before, but I think it's because the people in the gaming industry prefer to be playing games or making games rather than building tools for gamers. So there's a lot of unrealized opportunity that's now starting to get realized. And especially as it's going into the mass market, a lot more of the business people are starting to enter the scene as well. So a challenge that we'd faced, and especially me when originally originating this, was that there weren't any good tools to find people to play with. And we all know that things are more fun and meaningful when you share them with people you care about. There's no social network for gaming. If I want to talk about gaming, there's literally nothing like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or anywhere that I can post or talk about anything, because most of my friends don't play specific games that I play. There's no targeting. There's nothing that's like really built catering to this niche like at all. And tons of people have tried building these social networks and they always fail because of chicken and egg problems. What we've done is basically built the top app for gamers to find friends in a very highly curated way. So it looks at your personality psychology, your values, your gamer DNA, which is what's fun for you, and it works for hundreds of thousands of games across all major platforms.
Wow.
And what this has resulted in is us collecting the most data in the world on individual gamers, according to the world's biggest gaming news network that had wanted to acquire us. And it's because of this data that we're able to curate this information. But it doesn't allow us to just curate people. It allows us to curate events. For example, people don't know about these esports events, but if you're somebody who would probably like to know about it, this is a vector to discover it. It could curate games of which games you'll like, because they're very, very big investments of time and energy and money to download and buy and learn how to play. We could curate hangouts. If you're playing, there's a giant toxicity problem where because there isn't as much community nature as there used to be, and because you don't really know the people you're playing with and what they're like, people are just miscommunicating more or they're being assholes. But you can actually curate gaming groups that you put in calls together, which is something that we're now releasing as well. So what we're trying to be is sort of a social network slash hub slash discovery network for gaming. And from this, we've had a lot of inbound interest from major studios that want us to be the universal gamer sign-in system. Because sort of like is happening with the streaming platforms, you have all your data in different places. And if you go from one platform to another, you lose all your friends. You lose your games, your achievements, now NFTs, everything. So it's very, very, very inconvenient for gamers to not be able to have a universal identity throughout this world that has now become so big. So it
I
originated as a gamer friend finding app to solve that problem where nobody's curating deeply. It's basically every other app is just like your age, what's one game you like, but that's not really who you're going to be friends with. It's a lot deeper story, and that's why we have all these personality tests and we use all this data for curation that enables then so much more.
And so, firstly, on a base level, I love the fact that you're protecting people online. I think it's so incredibly important. We're involved in multiple companies that we've invested in here, which are all based on protection online. There's a part of me that I believe that the day the internet was invented was the day the parents could no longer protect their kids. Right? It was the day that, and almost in some ways, they gave up that responsibility. They were happy to. You're there, you're here. It's okay. It's not real. It's not around you. And I think also what older people didn't realize was that actually it was there. It was around them. Like this became their world, and this world was so scary because it could attack them at any single time in any place. And so I absolutely adore the fact that you came at this from a perspective of caring and said, look, cowards attack in the dark when they can't be seen. And that's one of the scarier things about online just in general, is that it's possible. And you're not going to allow that on your platform. And not only are you not going to allow that, but you're actually going to help foster an environment using technology as well as just really smart methodologies to actually help people build phenomenal relationships online with people that will be a powerful positive force within their lives going forward, rather than being scared what to go. And I'd love to bring Dana into this as well and just get your perspective of kind of how you did this. Like, what does the technology look like a little bit? And then also, more importantly, like, what is this world that you envision in the future? Now you have a tremendous amount of users, but how does this develop?
Okay, so let's say you want to play some multiplayer games. And what an option do you have? You open a game and game offer you some random people to play with. And sometimes it can be okay, but usually it's not. And usually what people experience is a lot of toxicity. It's random people who can not share with them the same idea of gaming. And suddenly the experience that should be the most fun because it's game is like the most fun thing. They was created literally for fun. They become like toxic environment. You have negative emotion after all, and you don't want to play anymore. You don't want to play maybe at all. And for me, like for a girl, it's like very important because toxicity in gaming industry can be huge. So what we do, we decrease this problem. We try to open like new level of relationship inside games. It's not like you play with random people. It's like we know, we can predict who will provide you the best experience inside games, and you can connect with someone who exactly like you, who like the same stuff like you, and you can keep this connection outside of gaming world. Um, and we're kind of in unique position when everyone is win. So we help gamers to have better experience, and we also do game more fun. So people spend more time playing games, and if they spend more times for a company who create these games, it's also a big benefits because you invest millions like dollars to develop something. You invest like 5 or 6 years. Like average game will take about 7 years to develop, and like then you can lose about like half of your users because of the bad curation. And it sounds ridiculous, like why company do not like curate these people well? And that's a good question. They don't do this because they have thought that speed of connection is more important than quality of connection. Sometimes maybe this is the case, but definitely not for everyone. So we more focus on quality of connection that we provide than on like just put you on some team as soon as possible.
Yeah. And Dana, I want to even go one step further on what you're saying. I think it's short termism rather than long termism. I think a lot of these brands that create networks create them because they just want to get users quickly. And what they don't realize is that we are in a state of mental health issues like never before. If there's never been so many complications that people have had to deal with. Like I always say, back in like my day, like there was a little bit of online, but it was generally analog. Like so you just had to deal with an analog world. Everybody today has to deal with an analog world and a digital world, and they're 50-50, right? And so you're literally out there all of the time dealing with maybe 5 to 10 times more issues that are happening. So people are initially seeing a shiny penny with some of the social platforms that were out there. But what's happening is they're then going through these negative emotions that you're talking about, and it's doing irreparable damage to them and to the platforms themselves because they will end up leaving these platforms. And what you're building is a sustainable long term platform that is maybe, and like I don't want to overplay this, but I think it's maybe one of the most important mental health things that will be done like in the next 5 or 10 years, because you're taking an entire generation of people and saying, look, we all want to be social. We all want to have friends. We all want to interact, and we want to deal with cool people who are. And when I say cool people, anybody who's my people is my cool people, right? So everybody out there has their own people who are their favorite people that they want to have around them. So the way that you curate that for folks who are listening, for investors who are listening, I don't want you to trivialize this as a gaming platform where people come on to make some connections and to find other gamers. I want you to look at it for what it really is and the construct of how it's going to affect society going forward. And John, can you help us understand a little bit about some of the technology that got built, the team that's been put together? Because then I want to dig into traction, but I want folks to really understand not just what you've built, but what you're building going forward, what this is
Yeah,
going to evolve
totally.
into.
So we originated this in Ukraine actually, because there's just so much underutilized talent there. It's changed a lot since we started this, where prices have literally doubled. But this enabled us to get this platform off the ground that now has 500,000 people on it with only $20,000 in total spend. And not only
Unbelievable.
that, but it's actually a very, very, very feature-rich platform compared to most things, and there's still so much more demanded by our users. What we have right now is essentially an iOS and an Android app, as well as a web app. So you can use it on different platforms. And the main functionality, our claim to fame, is if you go to Google and you type in find gamers or find gamer friends or find people to play with, GameTree is the top thing that shows up just because we're doing the best job in this niche. What this does enable is a very strategic positioning where we're collecting the most data in the world on gamers. And also people come to GameTree to find friends. So it's much easier to then give them different things to do together because the chicken and egg problem of social networks that we talked about earlier is actually naturally solved by the nature of the product that we've built. So we've gotten a grant to develop a desktop application that's coming out this month. So what we can actually do is have GameTree exist on your device on a computer where most of our gamers play. And it can actually, this technology that the grant came from allows us to overlay the interface of games. So you don't even have to go to GameTree a lot of the time to get the benefits of GameTree. So imagine that instead of just
Sweet.
clicking a button and playing with random people online, instead you first click one button in the game interface and it finds you your friends who are free right now, or people you've played with before who you liked, or people you're predicted to like, and puts you in one click in a voice call together. And who doesn't want that? It just objectively makes gaming more fun. And if you're meeting people through this, if you're playing around the same time and you like certain people, you'll just kind of naturally get matched with them more. So over the course of like 5 or 10 or 15 game play sessions, you just naturally develop these relationships and friendships with people that makes gaming so much more fun and meaningful than otherwise it would be if you're just alone at your house playing by yourself.
Yeah.
So the roadmap from here is essentially building on what we've built successfully as a gamer friend finding app to be more about on-demand curated hangouts. The gamer world calls this LFG, looking for group. It's a very common term, but there isn't any good curated infrastructure like we've built. And then to expand even farther out more towards social networking, because, you know, as a gamer, you want to be able to talk about a game or strategy or tactics or show off an achievement, and there's literally no good places to do that. And this is a now over $200 billion industry. It's enormous, and we're very well positioned to do this, as well as the buy-in from a lot of the big studios wanting us to do this as soon as we're a little bit bigger because it's such a big deal to implement. The other side is more discoverability, where the world has gotten so big and so huge, and there's so many choices that more important than just making more stuff and just throwing it into this ocean is actually helping you find the thing that you'll love the most personally from all of the choices, or even curating, not just curating, but even personalizing things to your unique identity, your unique needs. And so data is what unlocks this. And people don't trust the big companies with their data anymore. We get screwed. We get like casinos and like coin scams, like all sorts of stuff. People trust GameTree a lot. We're a public benefit corporation, and also we put a lot of energy and attention into our brand being very authentic about actually looking out for the well-being of the users as well. And ironically, even though we're not required to maximize profit, this is sort of the new way to do it in this very value-driven world, especially among gamers. So we're very uniquely positioned in the sense to also create sort of a hub or a discovery portal for gaming, where we utilize the data that you fill in to find friends or to get game recommendations, which we also have a very strong game recommendation AI, to also be able to just discover the coolest things in the world within gaming that you might otherwise never know about. For example, a local esports tournament. There aren't very good channels to discover this information in a very fragmented marketplace that existing players can't do due to lack of trust and conflicts of interest cooperating with each other.
So
May I
I
also add
go
a
on,
little
Dana.
bit?
Go on, Dana, please.
So about the technology that we use, it's like very sophisticated in background and very simple in front. So for users, it looks like we have few different things that we measure. First, it's what kind of fun do you looking for? So we discover for a long time of our testing, we discover that different people look different thing inside games. So someone more competitor, someone want win, someone more just more social experience and casual games. So we can measure all of this different type of funds that people looking for, and
Yeah,
kind
and
of
we're literally the only ones in the whole industry focused on understanding the players and treating them differently.
I'm getting to
this
this in a second. Go on, keep going, because I like where we're going. Go on, Dana.
second thing that we use is like scientifically proved personality profile that we've been developing for years. And what we're doing there, we kind of measure different activity in your brain by asking you what is your preferred behaviors, and it's also help us to predict who will more likely get along with. For example, some people more rely on their intuition, and some people more rely on on some fact that they know. Some people more rely on emotions and stuff like that. So we can measure this thing, and we can create like quite interesting and deep profile. We have a joke that sometimes we know more about our users than they know about themselves.
I love that. Okay, so here's where I want to get to with this. So I consider myself a conscious capitalist, right? I love capitalism. I think it's great, but only if you're conscious. And being conscious means you got to do good with your money, and you got to do good with the people around you. And if you don't, then you're just a dick, right? And I think when you have folks, and so I loved your social benefit part of it. Like whatever you call it, it's
And
irrelevant to
actually,
me.
real
Mhm.
quick interjection. The another component we track is your personal values, which is basically exactly what you're talking about right now. And
Mhm.
nobody else is even touching this, not even any of the dating apps or anything. But it's like if you don't have similar values to someone, even if you have the same interests, even if you have very compatible personalities, you're not going to accept them as a person because you think
Right.
they're just a bad person. So we
Yeah.
actually have like a very in-depth values test that makes sure the people you're gaming with are not only people that you'd enjoy playing with and not only enjoy playing not just one game in common, but like many games in common, but they're actually people you'd like and be real life friends with.
Yeah. And to your point, like yesterday evening, we had an event over at Expert Dojo, which was conscious capitalism, right? It was started by John McAfee, and they have groups all around the United States. It's really good. I should have actually invited you over to it, but it's like they have groups all around the United States. But you can see the people here are all very different to the people that were at the event the previous evening, which was all about Web3, which is different to the event of the previous evening, which is something else. Like, because you're right, these people are different groups. Many of them look different, feel different, think different, dress different because they're aligned with different priorities. So that's really good. So I love that part of you. For me, when I heard this, I thought this is so needed in society. Like, I'm so glad you're doing it. The thing that kind of got me like so excited though was the data aspect to it, because I suddenly started thinking, oh my God, like if they wanted to create like the greatest gaming team in the world, they could do it in 6 months because they have all the data. They know who the kids, and I don't, when I say greatest esports team, I don't just mean like the greatest players. I mean the ones that can be the most profitable. Like who's going to be the Michael Jordan of esports? Like based on the hundreds of thousands of people that are speaking about this person, you literally can monitor what should be done by people doing anything in esports, whether it's selling merchandise, whether it's creating teams, whether it's wondering who's going to be the next hot thing, whether it's wondering what game should be coming out. You literally become this friggin' matrix of
The data
everything.
is the world's biggest commodity by far now, and we're the ones with the widest open. And
Am
a
I
lot of
am
the
I
gaming
wrong here?
companies are in
By the way,
silos. Oh,
We
totally.
actually right now like
You're totally right.
working on the project when we curate professional players with casual players and want to see how the metrics will grow or
Well, it's
change.
about coaching,
Yeah.
matching professionals with people wanting to
oof.
get better. There's a company making tens of millions of dollars right now just matching coaches with players, and we just started a project with them this week, curating groups for training programs.
Yeah,
So we
because
know
none
for
of these
sure.
platforms are intelligent. I would say, let me not generalize. Very few of them have any intelligence built into them that actually truly tie the very best coaches with the people who need that type of coaching, because this is not an all size fits all. Dana.
That's actually not just about esports, but in general, right now, how does it work? If you try to like found some coach or
Yeah.
trainer or wherever, like probably what all platform tell you, it's like previous achievement of this person and his
Hmm.
photo, but you don't know anything about um, will you feel comfortable with this person, or will you match with him on some like personal level, and this it's actually like scientifically proved that if we have personal connection with our coach or with our teacher, we'll be better in result.
It's totally true. And listen, for anybody listening and you don't get it, you're on the wrong podcast. Just like come on, this is so friggin' obvious. Like, we have a proven team. We have an industry which is exploding right now. We have real needs. Like, you've seen the two areas which are huge. Like, socially, I cannot overemphasize this enough. It's really important. This has to be start being done. There are so many irresponsible platforms out there, the ones we use every single day, that just don't care. And we need to build this in. And actually, it almost needs to be a priority. But I love that. And the data aspect to it, like, I've touched two or three areas. Like, and John and Dana are laughing because they know there's like 10 other areas we could go straight down those rabbit holes. It becomes everything because remember, you can't really do this. I mean, Dan, you call them real sports, but like I kind of see them all as real sports, just like more physical than virtual, right? So for me, like in physical sports, it's extremely hard to do this because everybody is sitting in an audience in a stadium in many cases, and you can't really measure what they're doing and what their interaction is, everything else, because they're sitting there like sipping a soda and eating a hot dog, right?
Even
And
just in that one vector, talking about the opportunities, we could talk all day. So this is the last one I'll share, but just
I
imagine that
know,
there's
I
more than
know.
you can imagine. Um, Part of what makes real sports so special is that it's very tribal. It's something to do with your friends, something to
Yeah.
bond over. But esports, it's a little harder because you're online and you're at your computer. And nobody, like all these teams have big followings, but none of the teams really, like the fans really know each other that much. There aren't like public events that much. They're starting to appear more in bars and such, but another opportunity for GameTree, and there's just too many opportunities to pursue all at once, but that we are the best positioned for, is to make it so that when you watch these esports games, you can watch them in a tribe of people who you like and that matter to you, that make it more fulfilling and enjoyable than just watching by yourself, just like real sports. And that's I think part of what's going to create the next spike in popularity is bringing that tribality to esports. And Game Tree is the best vector that can be done for that.
And by the way, you know where we're going to do this, right? We're going to do the play thing in the dojo. Like, that's a done deal. We're going to Wisdom. We are going to bring your tribe to Wisdom. We're going to open up like all 5 domes and create the most epic esports experience that any of these people have ever seen. Like, because you're right, it begins, but the pure measurement online and then the ability then to be able to even take it offline or have them continue online is absolutely huge. So, okay, so look, anybody listening, it's a no-brainer. Like, this is the future, okay, and the present and the past. And so now we just want to talk about like how you get there. When we first spoke, I even remember Alex came on to me and he's like, these guys are just off the charts. Like, you're gonna have to try and get them, Brian, because they're that good. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I kept an open mind. I came on, and within like 5 minutes, I knew this. Like, this wasn't a diligent. It actually reminded me. We had a company we invested in Africa called Clasha about a year or so ago, and I remember when we put them in Band of Angels, we invested in them straight away, and we put them in front of Band of Angels, and the Band of Angels were chatting away, and they're like, yeah, well, we're diligencing, and there was one lady there, and she's an African lady, and she's saying, listen, gentlemen, I just want you to know, you believe you're diligencing this company. This company is diligencing you. So I felt that way with y'all when we were on the call, and I was glad that I passed your diligence. So for investors that are listening, like, you got to understand where there's a hot moving company and where value needs to be added to that company. And if you have that and you do, like, don't play with this one. This is an important one that is already proven out. And the thing that got me was, like I said, the data I loved, the social part of it I really liked. And then I just saw what you had done with so little money. Like, the fact that you got to 500,000 downloads within like what, 20 grand or like 20 or something silly amount of money. What that said to me is that you're master executors, right? So can you maybe speak to that and then speak to how you see that growing over the next couple of years and what you feel you need for that to happen, to actually get you there? Because that's it. There's no other questions here. Like, everything else is obvious.
So I would say that for understanding how we like achieve it, we need to look at our past. And interesting thing that it's like we've been going through 3 different generation of app. We've been testing and growing and understanding our users. So it's like very crucial because we was the first company who ever like tried to do anything like that. Like, we not really like understand how is that should work, how we should like do what we plan to do. And we've been going through like different generation, different prototypes, and we always like constantly self-developing and develop the product. And eventually we find our ideal spot and we find our ideal users. And what is the most important nowadays, it's users that are finding us. So right now we're like number one in Google if you're looking for like LFG or find gamers and play with people and stuff like that. So I would say that marketing marketing is very important for any kind of product. But if your product is the best on the market, it's a little bit easier for you.
Yeah, that's really it, is that none of the other products even come close in any way to what we built, because they're all just trying to do the old school model, which is just like make something, but we're like, no, let's actually make something that's like 10x more useful. Like we don't just find you a person to play with, like you don't even need an app for that. You just have random matchmaking, but we find you the best person to play with, and not just like locally, but across time zones or the entire world. So we've forged millions of connections. We get testimonials that are so heartwarming that are like, I never like, thank you so much. You've given me the life I've always wanted and never thought I would have. Like, if I can ever be helpful, like people, our community has translated the app into 10 languages. We have all these moderators and volunteers. Like, whenever you sign up, there's a real person. It's like Tom, but actually a real person who's a volunteer who's like, oh, I've like found really important people in my life because of this, and I want to give back. So it's not just a company, but it's also almost like a social movement or a revolution. And part of that going into the future is we need lots of resources because there's so much that can be done. It's not just like recreating Facebook, for example, but there's also all these tools that are specific to gamers. Not only that, but we also want to open up in our Series A part of the round to the community. For a lot of companies, that's sort of a reason because they failed to find VC money or something. But for us, it's actually very important because it's very much in our values that we want to share the wealth that's generated from this with the community that made it possible. As like if they're the ones who help make it, then they should, on some like very innate tribal sense, it makes sense that they should own part of it as well. So there's a lot of development going into like on-demand curated hangouts. There's tons and tons of B2B services that we can either serve directly or have third parties that deliver like all sorts of like curation, analytics tools, and things like that. And then on a user side, it's just a lot of there's this thing that has to exist that's sort of like a cutout hole in the universe, and we're the best ones to be seizing this. And a lot of now that we've validated the market where we know that we're providing value and we're growing organically, it's really a time to start pouring on the gas and adding the layers that this first layer that we've achieved now unlocks.
Incredible. And it's true. And actually, that whole sharing with the community, obviously, we believe that as well. We did the same thing ourselves last year. You know, that's how you get raving fans when they really see that authentically you want the very best for them on every single level, not just on that patronizing level that says, oh, what nice users. Thank you for being a part of us. So I think that's incredible. Look, I love, love, love that we've invested in you. We are going to do unbelievable things that you haven't even seen yet in LA to make sure that your brand blows up and everybody gets to be a part of communities which are just better for them. And from our side of it, we get to find the greatest teams in the world
Yeah.
straight away. So look, investors, we'll make sure you get John and Dana's details. I'll leave them with the last word. I just want to say to you, look, I don't come on this. We're not promoters. You can't come to Expert Dojo unless we're investing in you. We just invest. When I see companies that I know have got like such amazing everything opportunity for investors to come through, I can't help but tell you, you still do your own diligence, you still check out your own stuff. My only requests are just don't waste their time. The stuff they're doing is too busy to be messing around with people who are not serious. So, A, if you're a serious investor, reach out. They would love to speak to you. B, if you're in the esports gaming space, reach out to them if you can help in any way, whether it be connections, whether it be groups, whether it be other people, anything that can forward push the company. And anybody else who can help, then by all means, okay? John, Dana, I'll leave you with the last words. You guys are awesome. I love what we're doing. We're going to get this out to the world.
Yeah, like feel free to reach. We open for different interesting collaboration and cooperation, and we constantly looking for some interesting partnership for our company because this is something that will benefit both of us. And I just want to say that like our product definitely will make this world better, and we'll reach that plan that we have for next year. And I just want like you be part of our journey. I'm really glad that Expert Dojo with us on it, because it's like it was a really good news for us from like a lot of different invest funds. This one is actually something that really match with our values and with our vibes and energy.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you. All the way.
we could
John.
talk forever about GameTree just because there's so many. One, it's a big growing industry, and there's so many things you can do with the data. But
Yeah.
speaking to you, Brian, and Expert Dojo is out of everybody, you seem to have the smartest approach to us, which was a lot of accelerators are like, we give you some money or like we have a network, but those aren't really relevant if you're a good company. What's relevant is you actually are bringing in real experts and you're very focused on growth. And if you're growing and if the opportunity is hot, you don't really need like a little bit of money up front as like, or like a little bit more. You don't need the investor network because people are wanting to make money. And if they see that there's money there because of the growth, then that's what really matters. And you're the person who gets that the most.
Yeah, listen, mate, I'd give everything for you guys. I think the world needs you and you're building something awesome. So let's keep on building. And for folks to contact you, who's the best email?
I guess Juke, Juke at gametree.me.
Perfect. Okay. You all have it. You know what to do. And I'll see you later on.